Hey guys, so I'm finally doing it, the review of the Sightseeing New York pass that I had during my trip. I'm gonna review all the places that I've been and how much it would have cost me without the pass, and if it was worth it going or not. First thing that I did was the ride. So we're on day one. The price of the ride would be $69 without the pass. It's kind of like over the top comedy with like two people hosting kind of the ride on both sides of the bus. You're sideway in the bus. There's a big window on the side of the bus, and some like people on the street will perform and do stuff. It's quite funny, like I said, a bit over the top, but definitely one of those unique things that you only find in New York, considering New York is a place filled with artists, comedians and everything that might get some work or not. That light is changing way too much. Gonna have to go that way. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening in New York with those artists, those comedians that want to like go up the ladder and start with like other types of work. So that's something I would definitely recommend. It's a bit expensive, but yeah, if you have the pass, definitely worth it. You need to book it though, so be careful of that. The ride starts in Times Square, so right after that I actually wanted to check the Tussauds, like the statues of like celebrities and things like that. I entered the wrong door and I ended up at Ripley's, believe it or not. It's like a bunch of oddities and things like that that are displayed. A little bit of it's interesting. I wouldn't recommend it personally, except for like a couple of things that were fun to me. If you have kids, it could be a little bit more interesting. Above 8-year-old, I would suggest. But the price is $30 for that, so that brings us to $99 already after one day and two things done. After that, I just wandered around, went downtown, and I went to the Skyscraper Museum, which is $5 entry, so that's pretty neat. And the Skyscraper Museum is only is a pretty small museum, so if it's like a beautiful day, you just want to spend a little time inside or things like that, it's not really busy. And if you're interested in a skyscraper, you can just go there, and it's quite interesting. I really enjoy skyscrapers, so I'm gonna recommend it personally. But yeah, if you don't like skyscrapers or if you don't care, it might not be worth it. And after that, I went to Francis Tavern. It's one of the oldest building in New York, I believe. And if you're interested in New York history in general, the American history and things like that, the entrance is only $7. There are tours at 1 and 2 p.m. when I was there, so I just followed that person that can like explain more deeply what's around and things like that. So that was interesting. At first I was the only one, so like she gave me kind of like a personalized tour, then some people came up, but basically she gave me the basics that I needed to know to like for the rest of the tour, so that was really nice of her. So that's about it for the end of day one, I think. But yeah, I think that's about it. On day two, actually, I kind of miscalculated my thing, and I ended up spending the whole day without doing anything from the past, because I had a concert of Ghost and there was an event at 368 where I did like something with Samsung and stuff like that. So actually day 2 I kind of wasted it and didn't do anything. After Francis Tavern, it brings us to $111. Day 3, another thing you have to book is a walking tour that I did, the Graffiti Street Art Walking Tour with Brooklyn Unplugged. Brooklyn Unplugged is, I think, probably a one-person company that is really interesting and a very good discovery, like one of the best things I've discovered during my trip in New York. So I would definitely recommend that Graffiti Street tour that is happening in Bushwick. He talks about the Bushwick collectives and things like that. Introduce you to a whole bunch of things. That's how I discovered about the French artist Space Invader, that you have the app and you can scan his arts and things like that. So that I would definitely recommend. The guy is pretty cool. He knows his stuff. It is $32 for the walking tour, which brings us to $143 already. After that, I made my way to Manhattan, and it was rainy, and I was suspecting that most of the museum would be very crowded, so I checked here and there and I was right. So I ended up at the Ground Zero Museum Workshop. So my trick is whenever it's like museum weather kind of thing, if you're not that set on one particular museum, I would suggest maybe going to like the smaller ones. That way you don't waste too much time in line, and maybe go like, if there is really some museum that you really want to do, you go early when there's nobody yet. Anyways, so that was $25. It's kind of like a one room museum, and there's like artifacts around Ground Zero and the One World Trade Center, and it's a photograph who just was doing the documentation and the archive for like the recovery of all those things, and all the firefighters and the people digging and all of those things around after 9/11. So it gives you a audio thing, and you just put the number of the artifact, and there's a little story about the artifact. So I would recommend it, although I don't know, like $25 for that thing. The thing is, the numbers, the price that I'm saying are the price that are advertised on the Sightseeing website, and they're not always accurate. But $25 for that thing, it seems to be a little bit expensive. But if it's part of one of your pass or something like that, it's interesting to check out. After that, I went to the Chocolate Museum, which is really nice to go with like children and everything. There's a bunch of small samples, so that's nice. You can eat some chocolate for free. In my case, like with the pass, I just had to show the pass and things like that. Otherwise, it would cost you $15 to enter it. I'm not a massive fan of chocolate, even though I'm Belgian, so I had some good time. I kind of knew already everything about it because I learned that at school, because I guess Belgium teach you about how to make chocolate when you're a kid. So yeah, that brings us to $183 of visits already. I then went to the Madame Tussauds, the wax figures and all those things. That's something I would have probably never done if I didn't get the pass, and I'm not gonna recommend it because I don't care, it's not my thing. But in a way it kind of depends. If you like it, yeah, sure, go for it. Take pictures with like fake celebrities and things like that. Most of the celebrities are very American. Some of them, if you're not familiar with American TV and things like that, you won't even know. So that's the thing. There's only like a couple that I took pictures with because it was funny, but otherwise most things I didn't care. That brings us to day 4, I guess. Highline walking tour. I usually try to start the day with like a tour or something because they're usually pretty much earlier and things like that before everything opens, and then after the tour you can just do a bunch of things. Highline walking tour, another tour that I would recommend with New York something. I'll put the name of the company that has a bunch of tours. I only did one tour with them, but that was I actually did 2 with them, but that was pretty interesting. Very good guides. A lot of those guides will, like on the Unplugged Brooklyn part, it's a guy who is part of the community and knows about Bushwick collectives and street arts and things like that. On other parts here, for example, with that company, it'll be a lot of actors too, so there'll be quite entertaining guides doing jokes, doing things here and there. So yeah, definitely good guide on that part. Also knew a lot of bits and things, and like gave like good advice on a good restaurant, like kind of like unique places that you would only find in New York. So Highline walking tour, although I would recommend doing it, probably winter is not the best time to do it. That's what I'm gonna say, because like it's the Highline is like very green and things in the spring and all. So yeah, $35 for that tour, which brings us to $250. And yeah, I recommend it. Because it's quite next to the Highline, I then went to the Whitney Museum of American Art, which at least at the time where I was there had like a special level completely dedicated to Andy Warhol. If you like arts, I would definitely suggest it. Even if you not really interested in arts or things like that, but you like to take pictures or time lapses like this one, you could go there and you'll have kind of like it's in between Midtown and downtown, so you can like do kind of like a panoramic thing, or like a shot of downtown, shot of Midtown, Empire State Building. Like you choose. You have like you can see pretty much everything around. You just need to like get up and go outside, so it was pretty cool in my case, but definitely some good pictures and some good footage from there. $25 for the entrance. That's a good price for a good museum, which brings us to $280. I then went to eat at Buffalo Wild Wings. That one was the one in Times Square that I went to. It's just part of the pass are some restaurant that basically they have a menu just for the people with a pass, considered to be worth $25. Over there, I felt like there was not much option for like vegetarian stuff, because it's Buffalo Wild Wings. There's pretty much chicken and everything, but it's included. It's food. Everybody got to eat, so I did that, which brings me to a total of $305 so far. A little bit after that, which is it's a little bit later, so I actually did 2 walking tours with the same company. That one I actually booked last minute, because I did the first walking tour with that company and realized, they're actually a pretty good company of walking tours. I'm gonna book another one if it's available. And I did the Broadway walking tour, which has the problem of starting in the middle of Times Square, so I kind of had to wait for the walking tour to start in Times Square. It was interesting because there was like people coming up to me to talk to folk, whatever, so it was fun. But walking tour about Broadway, didn't know much about Broadway, but that's really interesting. You basically go in front of like each theater and she gives like history, it's really interesting walking tour. Also, if you're considering going to a Broadway show, she'll give you some tips and advice on what Broadway show to go check out. So definitely would recommend also that walking tour. She was also an actress. Knowing people inside the industry, really interesting anecdotes and things like that. Once again, $35 for the walking tour. Uh, as yeah, if it's not part of your path, $35 for a walking tour, I feel like you would have to be really into Broadway. But also why those paths are really worth it in the end. I'm already at $340. The pass itself cost me for like the 10 whole days, it cost me $300. So doing those bunch of activities that I've already listed, I'm already over the price, and my path is already worth it. Having the pass also makes you go do some stuff, because if you're like me, kind of like on a budget travel or things like that, you might be, I don't want to spend that money on that thing, I don't want to spend that. And if you, when you look at it, if you like do stuff separately, it adds up. In the end, I think I'm like at a total of more than $1,000. So getting that pass kind of like gives you the freedom of doing whatever you want, and maybe hopefully you meet some people that wants to do like similar stuff. There's like a bunch of museum that I was able to do with some people that I met while solo traveling. After that Broadway walking tour, it was quite late in the middle of Midtown next to Times Square and everything. So what I did was going to National Geographic Experience. It's a real nice experience, interactive. It's like 3D things. So the first part you get guided and like they explain some stuff. It's only footage and 3D, no actual animals, because it's National Geographic and they want to respect those animals and not put them in cages. $40, it's a bit expensive, but it's for a good cause, and they give you like interesting facts, and if you're sensitive to the environment and all those things, that's a nice experience to do. I did it in the evening. I would suggest doing that in the evening, because it's one of those things, if you check the schedule, there are some stuff that are open later than things, because most things I think close around 6 or 7, and that's what I would suggest is those ones that are open until 8 and 10. Maybe do it afterwards and around 8 and 10. Next day, day 5, I went to the New York Aquarium. It's quite a long way from, even if you're in Brooklyn or things like that, from anywhere you would stay, I'm guessing. So because Coney Island during the winter isn't open, I wouldn't suggest going there. There was like a 4D experience that I had the ticket but didn't go because it was only on like certain times. So yeah, it's a fun place. Like I got to see some animals and things like that. There seem to be quite, and most of those places now are like trying to be environmental friendly and like only have captive that have been born in captivity animals, and like study them and try to contribute to helping wildlife not being extinct. So yeah, because it's quite far, unless you plan on going to Coney Island or you want to see the beach and things like that, I went to like use my drone a little bit on the beach. So that was another reason to go all the way out there. But otherwise, it's quite far in the winter. Maybe not 100% worth it. 28 more bucks, which brings us to $408. After that, on the way back, I stopped quickly by the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, which it ended up being the dates free, I think. Otherwise it would be $15 for the entrance. During the winter, don't go there and don't waste your time. There's a bunch of I always forget the name, like those greenhouse. There's a bunch of greenhouse that you can check, and it's actually like during the winter it's freezing outside. Once you get in the greenhouse, just really hot, so you go like freezing hot, freezing hot, freezing hot. And I was afraid I would get sick actually. So yeah, no, I can't recommend it in the winter, but it's probably really, really beautiful other time of the year. At the other times of the year. Then I did the Brooklyn walking tour. I actually arrived a little bit late, so I missed the first part of it. But the guy, once again with Unplugged Brooklyn or Brooklyn Unplugged, had given some tips and like something like, if you're late, just meet us there. And I was able to reach them. Here it's a tour of Williamsburg, and it talks about the gentrification, hotel, and things like that, like all the what happened and why it is that way. $32 for that tour. It's not the one that I also didn't see the whole of it, so I can't really judge it. But it's not the one I would recommend the most from the 3 activities that are available with that company. But definitely nice tour. Guy who knows his stuff and is nice to be guided by. Day 6, I went early in the morning to the One World Trade Center observation deck because I wanted to avoid lines. Great place to do some time lapses, have great views, to take some great pictures from the tallest building in New York. Also, I've done like some similar, like, you know, observation deck in Toronto, Auckland, here in Melbourne, and I have to say it's probably the most recent too, but it's one of the best. The elevators have like animation of like, I won't spoil you, but it's like a history first one, and then just the second one can be a bit like overwhelming for some people because it kind of goes into all the direction, but definitely a very, very good experience. Once you're up there, took some great time lapse that I'm probably gonna try to share with you around this video to make it more interesting than just my face talking all the time. Definitely, I would say one of the must, especially if you have the pass. It's normally $34 to get up there. It's not cheap for an observation deck, but it's not very expensive either. So yeah, it brings us to $489 total so far. So the plan was that it was the day that I was getting tattooed. I would have gone to the observation center, then eat, then get tattooed. Because the place I wanted to eat was Bella Napoli, which also included in the pass, for about $37 meal that they suggest. It was a really good meal, but I had to do it after the tattoo because they had some catering thing happening and they didn't open at the time they were supposed to open. So that's, I guess, bad luck on me, but yeah, I still ended up being able to like go there. Did that, got the tattoo, went eat there, which brings me to $526 total, and then went to the Radio City Music Hall because I guess it was somewhat in the area. Very iconic concert hall. The Rockettes, that I had heard about it but didn't know much about, performed there a lot, like every day, several things. I didn't get to see the show. I don't really care about the show, but it's apparently a great show to see. And the inside of the buildings are very iconic. Some very famous people have been around there, and the style is kind of preserved from back in the days when it started and was really popular and just started becoming what it is. So yeah, $28 for that visit without the pass, which brings us to a total of $554. So yeah, recommend Radio City Music Hall. Iconic place in New York. Day 7 started the day with the Graffiti workshop of Unplugged Brooklyn. It was the third and last thing I could do with Unplugged Brooklyn, and since each time was the same guy doing the thing, I deducted that it was always the same guy and it's only one guy. So this one is like $3 more than the other ones because he teaches you how to like graffiti writing. Then went once again towards Manhattan, was trying to meet with some people here and there, try to go to the Mets, but they didn't let me in because of my skateboard, electric skateboard, or even any kind of skateboard. They don't really have a locking place where they're okay to put those things, so no way to get in the Met. Try to do the same at the Museum of Natural History, but same. So we went to, I say we because I was meeting up with someone, to the New York Historical Society. They had a temporary exposition about Harry Potter and had some like artifacts landed by J.K. Rowling or some of the illustrator of the books and movies and everything. So that was a pretty interesting little tour. Supposed to be $20 to get in. Because it was late and they were about to close, we didn't get to see the rest of the museum, but if I come back to New York, I can go back there and check it. That's why I put the priority on the special exhibition when I'm quite into Harry Potter. So that fit pretty well. Also, because of that exhibition about Harry Potter, they had the biggest gift shop about Harry Potter that I have ever seen. I didn't really care because I didn't want to buy anything, but massive gift shop. They had everything Harry Potter. That was insane. $609 is our total so far at the end of day 7. Getting into day 8, I started the day with food on foot. I will not recommend any of those things. It's once again a one-person company. It's kind of like also a thing of like people you get along with and things like that. He, to my taste, tended to overpack his tours, way too many people. Plus, there was not really any added value. He was guiding us, telling things here and there, but it's pretty expensive. It's like $49, so let's say 50 for a walking tour. And basically it takes you restaurant to restaurant, and you could have found yourself a little quick search at the era of the internet. Doesn't really give you like fun facts that you wouldn't find otherwise, and gets you to places that can be cheap, but there's no deal for like being with him. And yeah, no, even it's actually fun because he brought us to Artichoke. The guy of Unplugged Brooklyn also finished one of his tours next to Artichoke and say, oh, go there, and if you say that you come with my tours, they'll give you like a free drink for like any food purchase or something like that. You don't even get that with that guy because he has so many people in his tour that he needs to like keep going, so you can't take the time to like get a drink or a beer or something. So yeah, I can't recommend this. I'm not especially into food either, but yeah. I kind of was expecting it. I just booked it just out of curiosity and to, you have to do it before you criticize it. I've done it. I don't like it. It's not my thing. Anyway, maybe you like it, but yeah. Then went up north, uptown, to the Museum of the City of New York, which is definitely a museum I would recommend here. If you're interested in a little bit of history, or like there was some exhibition about protest, and once again a smaller museum that some people don't even know about. Like I met some New Yorkers who didn't know about that museum, and you avoid the very long lines of the other museum that are maybe more popular, more iconic, but you can go there any time of the year there too. But I don't know, that's just when it's too much lines, I don't want to waste my time in lines. That's also how I was able to do so many things. Yeah, price $18 for that museum, which brings me to $7 $176 because I was uptown and quite close to Harlem. There was that Buffalo Wing Harlem. I wanted to check if it was just one Buffalo Wing or Buffalo Wild Wings that you could go, or because there's three listed and you can actually do the three of them. I didn't do the one in Brooklyn, even though at some point I was close to it, but yeah, $25 more of food included in the pass. Then I guess it was getting late. I went. Oh yeah, I actually checked to during the winter. The only ice rink that they include was the one in Central Park. Went there, was like, oh, maybe I'll do some ice skating. When I arrived, everybody was like wearing like Trump thing, like the staff, and I checked online and realized that it was that ice rink was really crowded and it belongs to Trump organizations, so I would not go there because I'm guessing the way those pass works is that they bring people, to like they bring you you subscribe with them so that you get some tourists and people to that, and going there and using the pass to go there is in my way supporting the Trump organization, which for personal reason I would not do. So I went to something I didn't really know nothing about. I think it was actually added during my trip. It's called Skyscape. It's an interactive museum about intelligence agencies and things like that across history, and they start with like basically those kind of things started like World War II with Alan Turing. They talk a little bit about, if you've seen the Imitation Game movie, they give you like some of the actual facts because the movie was a bit romance, even though it's actually I think pretty accurate. Yeah, it's a very interactive experience. They kind of like give you a bracelet that you have to scan at different spots and tell you what type of spy you are, which very unsurprisingly I am the IT spy, whatever, cryptograph or something like that. $43 to get in there. It's pretty expensive, but it's a very nice music. I think they're expanding and stuff like that, so yeah. And sometimes they have like different things happening, which brings us to $844. It's getting really high. Next day, so Skyscape, another one that you can do late because it stays open late, so suggest doing it in the evening. Day 9, I started with the 9/11 Memorial Museum. I thought I was arriving there fairly early, not early enough because still some line. Was quite interesting. Very like it's a must do in New York. Checking the 9/11 Memorial. It's kind of like underground where those tower used to be. You get an app that you can download to like get a walking tour, like an audio tour and things like that, which is free. $26 to get in, they say here. I don't know. So yeah, I would suggest doing it. I couldn't really like spend too much time there. You could spend hours and hours, but I had booked another tour, walking tour after that, so I kind of like pushed it. But yeah, it was interesting to see, and yeah, it can be quite emotional as a visit. Get tears from either yourself or people around. So yeah, after that, as I was downtown, that was the plan. Going to slavery walking. So it's a tour about slavery and the Underground Railroad. It's kind of misleadingly titled Underground Railroad, which they talk about, but you never actually see it because probably it doesn't even exist anymore. Anyways, $35 for a walking tour, which is pretty interesting, about slavery, Afro-Americans, also Indian Americans. They start at the Indian American Museum and give you just the explanation about the 4 statues that are in front of that museum is already interesting, because it's like 4 statues for the 4 continents, and the context and the way that they're portrayed is like really like shows the history of the different continents and the way some things are seen. Then I went to Boca, which is Buca something. It's an Italian restaurant for which they give you like $15 off the check, similar to Planet Hollywood. So it's the same deal. It's the same company. It's just Planet Hollywood is like Planet Hollywood, and the other one is like Italian. So I did both of those. So it's $15 times each. Since the food is actually pretty overpriced, you end up paying a normal price for a meal. With the $15 less, so nice meal for fairly cheap. With those 2 added, plus the slavery tour and the anyways, so it added up, and I am now at $935. I did, because I wanted to see Top of the Rock. Went there, they told me I had to like wait for more than an hour since I got my ticket, and I had to wait for more than an hour, so I did the Grand Central audio tour, which is pretty interesting to know like different things about that very iconic train station in New York. So that little bit of walking audio tour, they just give you a little headset with something, you just put the numbers, a little map, and then you just learn stuff, which is pretty interesting. Then went to Top of the Rock. As quite funny was the place where I heard the most people speaking French. It is packed over there. Really nice to do some time lapses. Even though it was at night, I think I managed to get some good footage here and there. Just spend time there, like try to do things, take pictures. Evening, it was a good time to go. It's very windy and everything, but maybe not the best time, but it's nice to, like, because I already had done the one World Trade Center. I felt like I could do that one at night, even though it's probably better to do it. Rising sun would probably be impossible to get, but the sunset would be a really nice place to check. But usually it gets booked. Basically, some people book it out and select the time they get online, and so it's full every day at sunset, of course. And day 10, we get to day 10, where I randomly just went to, because I was like kind of running out of things here and there, and I actually always kind of like fancied checking Madison Square Garden, but the concert over there are just way too expensive and things like that. So there's a Madison Square Garden tour, which was a real nice tour. It was kind of like very fast-paced tour. $33. It's one of the tours that I would say if you don't speak English, because they go so fast and everything. He kind of checks at the beginning to make sure everybody speaks English, but he needs to do that fast. And it was like which after the $33 brings me to $1,017. I then went to check the Intrepid, which is a boat on the shore, plane carrier. They also have a submarine. It's very oriented to like war things and things like that, which I'm not especially into, but there's also about space exploration, and they actually have one of the first, like the very first space shuttle that actually didn't spend any time in space, but it was like the prototype for it, and in some tries and things like that. Interesting thing. $33 for the visit, which brings us to $10.50. I then kept going my way up and checked the Guggenheim place. Really nice architecture inside and outside, very good arts and everything. I don't really know much about it, even though I probably should, but it was great exposition. The thing goes like round and round and round, and then when you reach the top, you can get really good, cool pictures from down there. But there's a person being like, "Hey, be careful," because she's afraid you're gonna drop your camera and kill someone. Anyways, so yeah, security is a bit weird at the Guggenheim, but yeah, cool museum to check. One of the favorite of some locals, actually, from what I've heard. And then I actually feel like I finished with with the American Museum of Natural History, which is an awesome museum. It closes a little bit early, like not really early. It's just massive, so it's hard to like do all of it. Check, there's like a good experience, like a sphere that was going on about the history of the Big Bang and things like that, and then you can walk around and just watch those extra realistic depiction of like history and animals, etc., etc. No, really good museum, but it's really big. Yeah, definitely, especially for kids. And that one, American Museum of Natural History, very oriented around kids to just learn stuff. So yeah, pretty good experience. It's the last on my list, but I actually went because I just had nothing else to do in that evening, to Gulliver Gate, which is like a small like miniature buildings, and you can just see a bunch of things. It's fun, it's interesting, same thing, nice for kids. They have an airport that actually is pretty impressive, and everything's quite impressive. But yeah, it's just I went there just because it was open late and it was the last day of my pass. So I ended up saving more than $700 because I paid $300, and it ended up totaling at probably around 1100. So that pass was, I definitely made worth of it. I got my money out of it. A lot of like some of the things I wouldn't have done in normal, but having the pass, because I was solo traveling, I just needed to find stuff to do. Walking around the city is fun for a very long time. Even skateboarding around the city is very fun. But visiting things, learning stuff is also something I enjoy doing. So I feel like the camera is gonna overheat once again. I hope you learned stuff and that review was interesting. Thanks for watching. Remember that if it's easy, it's not funny. And see you in the next one.